Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a bit of a different video for you guys, as we'll be going through the new Mechabellum patch that just went live. I'll be giving some of my own opinions on the new patch. Do I think that the adjustments are going to be influential? Are they actually going to be good or bad for the game? How do I envision it impacting the way that Mechabellum is played right now? Of course, as I said, these are my own opinions. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong. It might very well be that in practice some of these things will turn out completely different. With that out of the way, let's get into it. So first, the fun stuff. Avatars and chat emoticons. New emoticons for chat have been added, and there are currently 30 collectible chat emoticons. Added 16 new collectible avatars. So if we go to the store, we can now see that alongside the avatars and also the in-game emotes, there are now emojis available for purchase as well. You can find them in your chat next to the chat bar. There is now an emoji tab where you can find all of your collected emojis. All players, I believe, start with having the little robot waving hi and the crying robot, which I think are all very cute. So overall, I think this is a fun addition. The avatars added, I know some people like them. I personally don't care all that much for them, but new content is always appreciated in that regard. Next up, the Mustangs. Attack is being adjusted from 35 to 33. Attack increase on aerial spec from 75 to 90%, and the price of missile interceptor adjusted from 250 to 200. Alongside this, improved firepower control system goes from level 2 to level 3, which means that it goes from costing 50 to costing 100. And advanced fire control system goes from costing 250 to costing 300. This is essentially also a Mustang nerf because these items are, well, mostly problematic on Mustangs. Do I think, starting with the equipment, that this is going to change anything? No. I think improved firepower control system was outrageously good. At 50 cost, it's still going to be very strong at 100. And in fact, the same is true for advanced fire control system. If anything, this item being more expensive will only make it being used less on other units because they can't make as much use of it as Mustangs can. And the reason for this is that when we look at Mustangs, they are pretty much the only unit in the game that have this amount of range and also can get the range enhancement, as well as having such a small interval when coming in a group of 12. They basically have such a high rate of fire, they're able to deal with things like shielded fangs, which no other unit can really deal with aside from units that can, you know, put down some sort of fire like Stormcallers or Vulcans, but that isn't very reliable. They can also deal with air units, and they have air spec, so they can deal with not only the big units, like Overlords, which arguably Phoenixes would be able to do, or Marksmen, but they can also deal with Wasps. And the fact that they can deal with such a high amount of units, and then also get damage upgrades, which allows them to carry even against the biggest of units. I mean, we've seen War Factories losing to mass carry Mustangs. It just pretty much makes them the rock, the paper, and the scissor in this game that is supposed to have counters and reactions to whatever your opponent is doing. With the attack items, why it's so effective is because once something dies, they can immediately change because of their high rate of fire. Other units will usually fire one shot that is powerful. They will overkill by a large amount, especially if they're shooting like things like chaff, for instance, and their shots get wasted. So the problem with Mustangs is that they have a lot of different tasks, and so changing them, nerfing them, will be very, very difficult because doing so might make it so that air units become too strong, or might make it so that fangs with shields become too strong, or something else. That being said, I do think that it's necessary, and looking at the current proposed nerfs, this doesn't seem like it's going to be enough. The attack adjustment from 35 to 33 is 5%. It's minimal. The attack increase, I mean, these aren't even nerfs, these are buffs. And yeah, the items are still in the game, and I think this is still valuable enough considering the all-purpose role of Mustangs that we will still see them at the top of the meta. Fortresses are next. Their HP has been reduced by about 2k HP, and the price of Elite Marksman is adjusted from 250 to 200. This would have made some sense if somehow rocket punches were nerfed or removed. Maybe then Elite Marksman might be something we see, but right now I don't think anyone is ever going to run this, so it seems like a bit of a useless buff. The HP reduction, it's okay, but I still think you will need large units to deal with them generally. And more importantly, their most problematic tech upgrades haven't been changed. If anything, one of the bug fixes actually makes it so that Fortress rocket punches now target even better than they did before. So yeah, Fortress being untouched in that regard is likely going to create some issues. Vulcan HP increased from 37 to 38,000. Fine. Again, I don't think it changes anything about the problems Vulcan is facing right now. It's a very difficult unit to make use of. If you want fire, you can kind of make use of Stormcallers. It's less expensive, and at least you don't have to waste into one big unit that can just, once it dies, there goes all your fire. It can get stuck on shields, it can get stuck on large units. It just doesn't do enough compared to all of the other giants, the overlords, the fortresses, the melting points, to justify buying it most of the time. So I don't think the HP increase will solve that issue, which is the main reason why we don't see it that much right now. Marksman, Assault Mode has been reduced in price yet again. So from 200 down to 150. I think the devs really want Assmen to become a thing. Is that going to be the case? I don't know. EMP might become even more valuable, so I would recommend taking it right now because, again, fortresses, if you are able to shut down those techs, very, very valuable. Rocket punches are still in the game and they beat pretty much anything. So, yeah. And if people actually decide to start playing Assault Mode Marksman, then being able to EMP them would also be very valuable. I still don't think we'll see them all that much. Fortresses are pretty good against Assmen, so yeah. Without fortresses being nerfed, I don't think this will shift the meta all that much, but it's an interesting tech. It might be worth trying out now. The equipment, I already talked about it. It's designed to nerf Mustangs, but it probably is more so making it so that no other unit will ever be using that item because of the additional cost, and it's only worth it picking it up if you play Mustangs. Unfortunately, I probably would have preferred seeing it being removed from the game because I think I don't think Mustangs need this item, or I think Mustangs are too strong with the item, and I don't think any of the other units necessarily benefit from the item all that much. That being said, Mustangs are problematic because of a host of other items like Amp Core, like Charge Shot, like increased range, that kind of thing, right? So it's a difficult thing. Then finally, some specialists have been altered. The effective Rhino spec has been adjusted to get the level 2 Rhino in the 4th round, so this is being delayed by an entire round. You used to be able to get it in the 3rd round, and then in return the player HP bonus has been adjusted from -400 to +300. So you get more health, but in return your Rhino arrives later. I think this is fine. I think round 3 level 2 Rhino was very, very difficult to deal with. It was a very strong specialist, and moving it one round later will definitely make it a whole lot less scary and will probably make it a bit more balanced. It might, however, even move to the point where it becomes too much of a nerf. Like, the difference between round 3 and 4 might be big enough that it's not scary at all anymore, but we'll have to see. But I do think that it was a good idea to change the specialist. And then Marksman specialists have been given a health buff straight up from -400 to 0. This makes a lot of sense because Marksman specialists used to be strong in the previous patches when we saw a lot of Marksman sledge. But now that we have Fortress Stangs kind of taken over, Melting Point Stangs taken over, that kind of stuff, Marksman Specialist isn't as strong anymore, so adjusting the health due to this meta shift is, I think, a healthy thing. I actually quite enjoy Marksman Spec, so I hope that we see a bit more of it. Some bug fixes have been changed. As I said, Fortress Rock Punch has basically been buffed. I don't think this is a good thing, but yeah, it is what it is. And then we also get a little bit of information about the next unit, the Wraith, which is a medium-sized air unit that costs 300 supplies and is expected to be released in early November. So we should see that in about 2 weeks' time. Again, if we think about how this all works out, Mustangs will remain very strong. Perhaps this is why they're buffing aerial spec on Mustangs, because we're getting another aerial unit, and Mustangs remain the primary unit for anti-air, in my opinion, because they're immediately able to deal with anything that sits in the air. They're able to deal with both the chaff air units as the large air units. And yeah. So probably Mustangs will remain a staple within the game for a very long time. What else do we have? I mean, my overall thoughts about this patch are it's okay. It's moving towards the right direction. I think the devs are understanding that Mustangs are needed a nerf. Not touching fortresses though seems a bit odd because I think that they're overly strong. You see them almost in every single game, if not you see them every 2 games at the very least. They're just kind of a do-it-all giant. They can even win against their counters, which is supposedly melting points, when they have rocket punches, and it's just such an effective tech upgrade that it would have been nice to see a nerf to that as well. But maybe that is something that will come later on. So yeah. These are my overall thoughts on the patch. If you have your own ideas on this, if you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to like the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to drop a follow or a subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with all my latest content. Make sure to check me out on Twitch if you want to see me play live. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.